the waitress who returned a diamond ring, not knowing the CEO was testing everyone that day. Before we begin, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And when the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The morning sun slid through the greasy windows of Harbor Diner, the kind of place where the coffee was always burnt. The pancakes were always slightly overcooked, and the regulars showed up before dawn just to complain about both. For Lena Reed, it was just another Tuesday, another shift, another 12 hours of pretending she wasn't drowning. She tied her apron around her waist with a well-rehearsed pull, tucking the frayed edges behind her. She could still feel the thin bruise on her wrist from carrying too many trays at once last night. She ignored it. She always did. At 6:04 a.m., she stepped into the dining area. The diner smelled like toasted bacon and bleach, her two least favorite scents. But Lena breathed in any way. Routine gave her a strange comfort, even when the routine exhausted her. "Morning, Lena," called out her manager, Dale, wiping his forehead with a napkin like he'd already been working for hours, though he arrived 10 minutes ago. "Morning," she said, forcing a smile. "You're on tables 7 to 12 today. And stay sharp. We got a corporate guy coming in. I don't know who he is, but the reservation was weird. No name, just private. Ordered the quiet corner." "Because nothing says privacy like Harbor Diner," Lena muttered. Dale didn't laugh. Dale never laughed. She grabbed her notepad and walked toward her section. There were already 2 customers. An elderly couple who bickered every morning. A sleepy student typing aggressively on his laptop. And then, table 12. The quiet corner. It was empty now. Just a clean table near the big window. The one that rattled on windy days. Lena didn't think twice about it. Not yet. She didn't know this table would change her life. The man who didn't want to be recognized at 6:28 a.m. The bell above the door chimed. Lena looked up. A man walked in, tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a black coat and a simple gray sweater beneath it. No expensive watch visible. No obvious jewelry. No security detail. Just a man. But something about him felt different. Not threatening. Not arrogant, just heavy, like he carried the world on his shoulders and had stopped pretending it didn't hurt. He paused at the entrance, scanned the room with eyes that looked like they hadn't slept properly in months, and then quietly walked to table 12, not waiting to be seated, not asking permission, just sat down. Lena approached with her usual smile. The one that hid the fact her rent was already late again. "Good morning," she said softly. "Can I get you started with something? Coffee? Tea?" The man lifted his gaze. His eyes were striking, a mix of steel gray and soft worry. "Coffee," he said. "Black." "Coming right up." He nodded politely and looked out the window again, as if counting the cars passing by. Lena poured the diner's darkest roast and brought it over. When she set the mug in front of him, he said, "Thank you," with genuine sincerity, as if he wasn't used to being served without someone expecting something in return. She smiled again, this time a real one. "You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else." She walked away, but out of the corner of her eye, she saw him exhale like he'd finally found somewhere he didn't have to perform. She didn't recognize him. She didn't know most people in the city would have. She didn't know she had just handed coffee to Evan Holt, the elusive founder and CEO of Holt and Gray Technologies, a multi-millionaire whose face was regularly on magazine covers, though he rarely appeared in person. To her, he was just a tire man with kind eyes. And that was exactly why he came. Lena's world, by 7 a.m., the diner was full. The morning rush had begun, and with it, the controlled chaos Lena had mastered. "Order up," shouted Tony, the cook, sliding a plate of eggs to the counter. Lena adjusted her ponytail and carried 3 plates at once to table 9. A baby cried at table 8. Someone complained their bacon wasn't crispy enough. The student spilled his orange juice. She handled it all with grace, but inside, She was unraveling. Lena had grown used to balancing pain like this. Her mother was in assisted living after a stroke. Medical bills had eaten through their savings. And her younger brother had just lost his job and moved back into her tiny apartment. Every dollar mattered. Every tip kept them afloat. She didn't have time to break. Not when life already felt like thin glass. When she brought the check to the elderly couple, she glanced at table 12 again. The man was still there, slowly drinking his second coffee, staring out the window like he was searching for something he'd lost long ago. She walked over. "How's everything tasting?" she asked, though he hadn't ordered food. He blinked and looked up. Sorry. I didn't realize how long I'd been sitting here." "It's okay. Sit as long as you like." He hesitated, almost surprised at her kindness. "Do you have something you recommend?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Honestly, the pancakes are good if Tony didn't burn them today. The omelet is decent. The biscuits and gravy, well, depends how brave you are." For the first time, he smiled. Barely, but real. "I'll be brave," he said. "Biscuits and gravy. You sure?" She laughed. "Positive. All right. I'll pray for your stomach." He laughed quietly, and it was a sound he hadn't made in a long time. Lena walked back to the kitchen, unaware that her simple humor had already made an impression. The accident around 7:30. The diner filled with noise. The radio played a faint country song. Forks clattered. People gossiped. The coffee machine hissed. But at table 12, silence. The man, Evan, checked his phone once, frowned, and put it face down. He didn't want to be found today. Not by his board. Not by investors. Not by journalists. Not by anyone who wanted a piece of him. He just wanted quiet. Lena brought his food. He thanked her again, as if gratitude was stitched into him. But then, something happened. She reached for a napkin dispenser to refill it, and her elbow accidentally brushed the edge of the table. A soft metallic sound hit the floor. Clink. Lena froze. A ring was rolling under the table. She bent down quickly and grabbed it. It was stunning. A man's diamond ring, heavy, platinum, flawless. Worth thousands. Possibly tens of thousands. She stood slowly, staring at it. Evan hadn't noticed. He was looking out the window again, lost in thought. For a second, one single, dangerous second, Lena felt something twist in her chest. Her rent, her mother's medications, her brother's situation. This ring could change everything. No one saw it fall. No cameras in this corner. No witnesses. Her heart hammered. But no. No. She inhaled sharply and closed her fist tightly around the ring. Then she stepped toward him. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor inside. "This fell." Evan turned, and his expression froze. Not with fear, not with suspicion, but with a strange mixture of surprise and relief. Lena placed the ring gently on the table. Her hand trembled just slightly. She said softly. Evan stared at the ring. For a long time, as if he wasn't looking at metal, but at a memory. Finally, his voice cracked. "I didn't drop it," he whispered. Lena frowned. He looked up at her, and for a moment, she saw something raw in his eyes. "I left it," he said quietly. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" He shook his head and looked down at the ring again. "I left it there on purpose," he said more clearly, though his voice was still soft. "I was testing something." Lena had no idea what he meant. Testing what? Testing who? But before she could ask, he slid the ring into his coat pocket and pressed his fingers to his forehead, like he regretted everything he just said. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Forget I said that." But she couldn't, because the way he looked at her wasn't cold. It wasn't calculating. It was conflicted, emotional, almost grateful. "You don't need to explain," Lena said gently. "I just thought you'd want it back." He studied her for a long moment. Most people wouldn't have returned it. Her cheeks warmed, but she shrugged lightly. Doesn't matter what most people do. He exhaled deeply. You have no idea, he said quietly, how much this means. And he meant it. He leaves without a name. By 8:03 a.m. Evan stood up to leave. He placed cash on the table, far more than the bill required. Lena noticed and stepped toward him. Sir, you left too much. It's for the good coffee, he said simply. And the honesty. She opened her mouth to respond, but he was already slipping on his coat. Before he left, he paused near her. What's your name? He asked. Lena. He swallowed lightly. Thank you, Lena, for everything. And then he left, moving quickly, disappearing like a man afraid someone might catch him staying too long. Lena stood by the counter, the large tip still on the table behind her. Tony whistled. Man liked you, he teased. Please, she muttered, rolling her eyes. He was just being polite. But inside, something felt different, strange. Like the quiet man at table 12 had brought a storm with him, and left before she realized she was standing in the wind. The revelation that afternoon. The diner was slow. Lena was refilling napkin holders again when a group of teenage girls at booth 2 squealed loud enough to make Dale drop a plate. Oh my God, look! One of them shouted, holding up her phone. He was spotted downtown this morning, in a diner. Lena didn't pay attention at first, until she heard a name. Evan Holt. The girls giggled. He looks so stressed. Another said, but he's still gorgeous. Lena froze. She turned, slowly, toward them. Who did you say? She asked politely. The girl showed her the screen. A blurry photo taken through a window. A man sitting alone at a diner table. Table 12. Black coat. Gray sweater. Steel gray eyes. Lena felt her heart stop. She whispered. That's here. The girls gasped. You saw him. You serve him. What was he like? But Lena barely heard them. She was staring at the picture. At him. The quiet man who thanked her. Who laughed at her joke. Who confided something strange and vulnerable about a ring. He wasn't just a tired customer. He was a millionaire CEO. A man whose company built half of the apps on everyone's phone. A man whose name was synonymous with success and pressure. And he had come here, to her diner, to table 12. Her pulse quickened. She looked at the spot where he sat, the window now empty, but she could almost feel his presence lingering. The ring, his words, his eyes. Suddenly, the entire morning felt different, heavily so, like she had stepped into someone else's story without realizing it. But this wasn't someone else's story. It was hers, and his, though neither of them knew it yet. A millionaire in hiding, Evan Holt leaned back in the black SUV, the leather seat creaking beneath him as the city sped by in a blur behind tinted windows. He kept his eyes closed, as if shutting out the world could silence everything inside him. Across from him sat Nora Shaw, his chief assistant, efficient, sharp, perpetually exasperated with him. She tapped her tablet with controlled irritation. You disappeared again this morning, she said. No driver, no security, no itinerary. Evan, you can't keep doing this. He didn't respond. Do you understand the panic you cause when you vanish? The board was ready to call the police. I wasn't kidnapped, he said quietly. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Nora exhaled hard. Where did you go? Evan hesitated. A diner near the harbor. Her eyebrows shot up. A diner. Yes. Why? He turned to the window again, watching the city distort in the glass reflection. I wanted to be somewhere normal. Nora frowned, not understanding, but recognizing that tone. It was the tone of a man exhausted beyond logic. She folded her arms. And? Did you at least drink decent coffee? He almost smiled. Not particularly. Did you at least avoid testing people today? He froze. Nora's eyes narrowed. Evan. He stayed silent. You brought the ring, she said. Not a question, a statement. Didn't you? His fingers brushed the pocket of his coat. The ring pressed against the fabric like a pulse. I didn't mean to test anyone, he said. That's what you always say. It's the truth. Then explain why you left it on the table. Evan's throat tightened. How could he explain that he hadn't slept? That the betrayal by his former partner still rotted inside him? That he no longer trusted anyone, not even himself? That carrying the ring felt like carrying the last piece of someone he'd once admired? He couldn't tell her any of that. So he said nothing. Nora sighed. Please tell me someone didn't steal it. He shook his head slowly. No. What happened then? He didn't answer. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw the waitress kneeling to pick up the ring. Her soft gaze. Her steady hand. Her quiet honesty. He had watched hundreds of people fail small tests of character. He hadn't expected her, a stranger, to pass so effortlessly. So he said the only thing he could. I met someone. Nora blinked. Someone important? Evan swallowed once. Yes. But he didn't explain. Because he wasn't sure he understood it himself. The waitress who couldn't forget. Lena tried to pretend her shift was normal. She served eggs, refilled coffee, fetched extra napkins, and smiled through exhaustion. But nothing felt normal. Not after what she discovered. Not after seeing his face on someone else's phone. Not after realizing that the quiet man in the gray sweater, the man who laughed at her joke about biscuits, was Evan Holt, one of the most influential CEOs in the country. He sat at table 12, in her section, looking like a man worn thin by life. But the part that replayed in her mind over and over was the ring. The way he said, I left it. And the way his voice cracked, as if the words carried weight no one else could see. Her chest tightened every time she remembered it. By late afternoon, when she finished her shift and stepped outside into the cold breeze, she pulled her jacket close and tried to shake him from her thoughts. But she couldn't because she hadn't seen a powerful CEO. She had seen a lonely man. Storms in the boardroom the next morning. Holt and Gray's top executives gathered in the conference room. The air felt tense, thick with unspoken complaints. Evan walked in last. The chatter stopped instantly. He sat at the head of the table, posture straight but tired, eyes shadowed by lack of sleep. A board member cleared his throat. Mr. Holt, your absence yesterday caused issues. Another chimed in. We missed 2 deadlines waiting for your approval. And the press is already speculating. Added a third. Evan lifted his gaze. I needed time. With all due respect, one of them said sharply, you can rest after the acquisition is complete. Evan's jaw tightened. He hated this, the pressure, the expectations, the constant view of him as a machine made of productivity and genius. No one asked if he was okay. No one cared, except maybe. His thoughts strayed before he pulled them back. I'll review everything today, he said. That's not enough, someone argued. We need leadership. Evan stood up suddenly. You'll get it. And he walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence. A return to the diner he didn't plan to return. He tried to focus on meetings, on documents, on numbers. But between every line of every contract, her voice slipped back in. You dropped this. It doesn't matter what most people do. Most people. He knew exactly what most people did. They took. They lied. They betrayed. She didn't. By 8:10 a.m., almost against his own logic, he stepped through the door of the Harbor Diner again. The same bell chimed overhead. The same smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon filled the air. And then, there she was. Lena stood behind the counter, hair in a ponytail, apron tied clumsily, wiping down a table with gentle movements. She didn't see him at first, but when she did, she blinked in surprise. and her lips parted just slightly. "You came back," she said. Her voice wasn't loud or excited. It was soft, almost relieved. Evan nodded, unsure why his pulse quickened. "If that's all right." "Of course. Table 12? He almost smiled. "Yes." She guided him there, placed a mug in front of him, and poured coffee. "Black," she said. "Right, right." She turned to leave, but paused. There was the question she'd been holding since yesterday. "Can I ask something?" Evan's stomach nodded. "Yes." "Why did you say you left the ring on purpose?" His breath hitched. You should lie. You should deflect. But Lena's gaze was calm, open, patient, the kind of look people rarely gave him anymore. A look that didn't demand anything, didn't expect anything. It disarmed him completely. He lowered his eyes. "I wanted to see what someone would do." He admitted quietly. "Why?" He swallowed hard. "Because someone I trusted once didn't choose honesty." Her expression softened, not with pity, but understanding. She didn't know his story, but she recognized pain when she saw it. "Who?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "My business partner," he said. "My closest friend. He stole millions from the company and tried to pin it on me." Lena's breath caught. "That's awful. It nearly destroyed everything. And now you test people?" He forced a weak smile. "Sometimes. And you expected someone to take it?" "Yes." "But I didn't." "No," he whispered. "You didn't." For a moment, neither spoke. Something unspoken passed between them. Fragile, yet powerful, like a quiet truth settling into place. Then she exhaled. "You know," she said gently, "you can't judge everyone by what one person did." His eyes lifted to hers. "You sound very sure." "I've worked in a diner for years," she said with a half laugh. "I've seen the worst, but I've also seen the best. They don't cancel each other out." Her words hit him harder than she knew. He leaned back, studying her. "They're different," he murmured. Lena blushed. "I'm just a waitress." "No," Evans said, voice low but firm. "You're not." She didn't know what to say. Neither did he. An unexpected offer. It happened naturally. Too naturally. He stayed longer this time, drinking his coffee slowly, asking about the diner, about the harbor, about the regulars. And she talked. Not much. Not deeply. But enough. Enough for him to notice her brother's old sneakers she had repaired herself. Enough to notice the small bruise on her forearm from carrying too many plates. Enough to notice the exhaustion she tried to mask with smiles. When she brought his check, Evan looked at her, hesitating. "Lena," he said. "Yes. I might have an opportunity for you." She blinked. "An opportunity?" He nodded. "At Holt and Gray, we're starting an employee training program. Management track. Full-time. Paid well." Her heart thudded. "And?" she whispered. "And I think you'd be perfect." She froze, the tray in her hand suddenly heavy. "Why would you think that? You don't even know me." "Because I know what I saw," Evans said. "Integrity, work ethic, patience, honesty under pressure. People go their whole lives without developing that." Lena swallowed. I didn't." "You returned something priceless without thinking twice," he said. "That's more than most executives in my company would have done." Something in Lena's chest tightened painfully. Hope, fear, disbelief. "I don't know," she whispered. "I have my mom, my brother, bills. I can't just jump into something like that." Evan nodded. "Understand." He reached into his coat and placed a small, simple business card on the table. "If you change your mind," he said, "call me." She glanced down. Evan Holt, CEO, Holt and Gray Technologies. Her breath stilled. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering trust. And something deeper flickered in her, warm and dangerous. She lifted her gaze. "Why me?" she asked quietly. He stared back at her, unguarded for the first time. Because you reminded me what people can be, he said. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the card. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Because a thread had been woven between them. Thin but undeniable. And neither of them realized how tightly it would pull. The phone that would not ring. Lena stared at the business card on her nightstand. The elegant white print. The minimalist logo. His name. She had held it between her fingers dozens of times. But she still couldn't call. Not because she didn't want to. Because she was terrified she might want it too much. She lay on the old sofa in the small living room she shared with her mom and younger brother. The wallpaper peeled. The radiator clanked. The silence was heavy. The kind of heavy that builds from years of holding a family together alone. Her mother stepped into the room, rubbing her temples. "You're thinking again," her mother said. Lena forced a smile. "Always." Her brother, Leo, emerged from the bedroom next, dragging his backpack. "You're working tonight?" he asked. "Double shift," she nodded. "We need to cover the bills this month." He flinched. "I can get another part-time job." "No," Lena said quickly. "You focus on school." He frowned, but didn't argue. Lena pocketed Evan's card and stood up. She couldn't call him. Not when she couldn't even fix her own life. The CEO who checked his phone too often. Evan was not a man who waited. He was a man who decided, led, executed. But Lena's silence unsettled him in a way no board member ever could. Every hour or so, his eyes drifted to his phone. A subtle movement, barely noticeable. Except to Nora. "Are you expecting a call?" she finally asked. Evan didn't look up from the document. "No." Nora raised an eyebrow. "You keep checking your phone." "That's a habit." "No, it's not." He sighed, setting the pen down. "Do you want to know what terrifies powerful people, Nora?" "I assume you're about to tell me." He looked out the window. The city stretched below like a monument to ambition. It's not failure, not money, not competition. Then what? Not being enough. Nora blinked. She said slowly. "So, she hasn't called." He said nothing. Nora softened, which she seldom did. "You could call her." "I don't want to pressure her," Evan murmured. "And yet you're torturing yourself." He didn't deny it. Because she was right. When worlds collide by Thursday, Lena was running on caffeine and stubbornness. Morning shift. School pickup for Leo. Late shift. She didn't see Evan walk into the diner. Not at first. She was wiping down a booth. Hair escaping her ponytail. Apron smudged with syrup. Rough day? She froze at the familiar voice. Her heart leapt, painfully stupidly. She looked up. He stood there dressed sharp, out of place among the diner's cracked vinyl seats. Yet somehow softer than the last time. "Evan," she breathed. "I didn't expect." "I know." She swallowed, suddenly self-conscious. "You shouldn't be here." "I want a coffee," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't actually like the coffee here." His lips curved, a real smile. "Maybe I wanted the company." That did something dangerous to her heartbeat. She motioned to his usual table. He followed. When she poured his coffee, her hand shook slightly. "You didn't call," he said gently. Lena stiffened. "I didn't know if the offer was real." "It was. Still is." "Of course." She nodded slowly, not meeting his eyes. "I'm not like people in your world." "I know. And I don't have the freedom to just take risks." "I know." She looked at him then, really looked. "You don't know everything," she whispered. He leaned forward. "Then tell me." The weight she carried she did. "Not everything. Not the darkest fears. But enough. My mom's health isn't good. My brother might lose his scholarship if he misses one more exam. We owe 2 months of rent. And I'm working 3 jobs. If anything goes wrong, everything collapses." Evan's expression changed. Not pity, not shock. Something quieter. Pain. "Why didn't you say anything yesterday?" he asked. Because people don't like hearing about problems. Lena. She looked up. I'm not people. That sentence alone nearly made her knees weak. But she straightened instead. I can't take a job from you just because you feel grateful or responsible. That's not why I offered. You don't really know that. You don't know me. Evan's jaw tightened. That's exactly why I want to know you. She froze. Her breath caught. And that moment of vulnerability, was what broke the fragile calm between them. The overstep Lena went to refill another table's water pitchers. When she returned, Evan was speaking quietly with the diner manager, Mr. Cook. She approached, confused. Mr. Cook smiled awkwardly. Lena, good news. We've rearranged the schedule. No more night shifts for you. Starting next week, you'll have fewer hours. Her heart stopped. Fewer hours. Less income. Impossible. She turned sharply to Evan. What did you do? Evan blinked. I asked him not to overwork you. You're exhausted. You talked to my boss? She whispered. I was trying to help. That's not help. He frowned. Lena, that's interference. His breath caught, and hers came out in a shaky rush. You don't get to fix my life, she said. I wasn't. You don't even know me. You don't know what losing those hours means. Then tell me. No. He stiffened. The manager quietly slipped away. Lena's eyes stung from anger, embarrassment, fear. I can't have someone like you stepping into my world and rearranging everything. She whispered. Someone like you. It hit him harder than she intended. Evan stood slowly. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to cross a line. She stepped back, breathing unevenly. Maybe that's the problem, she said softly. There's a line between us. And maybe it's too big. Evan opened his mouth, but no words came. He picked up his coat, paused, looked at her one last time, and said quietly, I'll stay on my side of the line, if that's what you want. She didn't answer. She couldn't tea, and he walked out of the diner, leaving behind a silence that hurt more than any shout. What hurts worse than pride? That night, Lena cried. Not because she hated him, because she didn't. Because for the first time in years, someone wanted to help her, and she didn't know how to let them. Meanwhile, in a quiet penthouse across the city, Evan sat alone, staring at the untouched glass of scotch. Nora found him hours later. What happened? She asked. I crossed the line. He whispered. Which one? A line she needed. A line I didn't see. Nora exhaled. Will you try again? He looked at the empty space beside him. I don't know if she'll let me. But deep inside him, somewhere beyond logic, fear, and trauma, he hoped she would. Lena didn't expect the silence to hurt this much. She told herself it was for the best. That distance would protect her from getting pulled into a world she didn't belong to. She convinced herself that Evan was just a stranger with money and good intentions. But every night, when she locked the diner after her shift, she hoped he would be waiting outside. He never was. She checked her phone. No calls. No messages. Nothing. It should have mattered, but it did. Meanwhile, the consequences of losing her night shifts hit immediately. The envelope with bills stayed on the kitchen table like a quiet threat. Her mother coughed more often. Leo avoided looking at her when he asked for money for a school project. Lena carried the weight alone again. And yet, even when everything felt like it was falling apart, she couldn't bring herself to call Evan and say, I need you. Because she didn't want to need anyone. Not again. The CEO who slipped back into his armor. Evan didn't tell Nora what really happened. Not the details. Not the sting. Not the humiliation. Instead, he worked. Meetings. Negotiations. Contracts. A new office tower blueprint. A marketing crisis involving a faulty shipment. Work was predictable. People, however, were not. And Lena was the most unpredictable person he had ever met. Despite everything, He found himself walking by the diner twice that week. Once in the evening, once early morning. He didn't go inside. He just needed to see the place. Needed to feel something. But each time he stopped at the door, his chest tightened. She had drawn a line, and he wasn't sure he had the right to cross it. The other man, on Friday morning, the diner bell jingled. Lena turned, expecting a regular. Instead, she froze. A well-dressed man in an impeccably tailored gray suit stepped inside, adjusting the cufflinks on his immaculate shirt. His hair was styled with calculated precision. His smile, charming but sharp-edged, was clearly practiced. His eyes landed on her immediately. "You must be Lena," he said smoothly. She blinked. Do I know you?" "Not yet." He offered a hand. "Adrian Hale." The name sounded familiar. Too familiar. Her breath caught. He was the COO of Blackstone Dynamics, Evan's right hand, and, according to the articles she glanced at online, his rumored rival for the CEO position. "What are you doing here?" Lena asked carefully. "To have breakfast." Adrian smiled. "And to meet you." She stiffened. "Why?" He let his eyes travel around the diner. "Because someone has been very careful not to talk about you, which is suspicious." Lena swallowed. "I think you're mistaken." "No, I'm not," he said, sliding into a booth. "I know Evan. And when he avoids a topic this hard, it means it matters." Lena's heart hammered. She stepped back. "Coffee?" she asked professionally. Adrian smirked. "Only if you have a moment to talk." "I'm working." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Quite the opposite. I'm here to protect him, and you, if you're smart." The way he said it made her skin crawl. "Protect us from what?" she asked. Adrian folded his hands on the table. "Power attracts enemies. And Evan has more than he realizes." A pause. "And now so do you." She froze. Adrian's tone shifted, less charming, more surgical. "If you care about him, keep your distance. And if you don't?" He smiled coldly. "Then this conversation never happened." She stared at him, stunned. Then something inside her snapped. "I think you should leave," she said quietly. Adrian raised his brows, impressed. "Interesting." He stood, dropped a $50 bill on the table, and buttoned his jacket. "Take care, Lena." He paused at the door. "And remember, nothing stays hidden forever." Then he left, and her world tilted. The call she didn't want to make. That afternoon, she waited until her shift ended before sitting on the curb behind the diner. Phone in her shaking hands. She shouldn't call him. She didn't want to need him. But Adrian's words kept ringing in her ears. Enemies. Protect him. Protect yourself. So she dialed. Evan answered on the first ring. "Lena?" Her lungs tightened. "Can we talk?" She whispered. "You can have anything you need." "No, just talk." He hesitated. "Where are you?" "Behind the diner." "I'll be there in 10, he said. Of course he would. The truth between them. Evan arrived in 7 minutes. He stepped out of the car without a jacket, without pretense, without the armor he wore in boardrooms. Only concern. "Are you okay?" He asked immediately. She nodded, but her eyes said otherwise. He sat beside her on the curb, ignoring the cold concrete and grease stains. She took a breath. "Your COO came to see me." Evan went still, stone still. "Adrian?" She nodded. "What did he say?" "He told me to stay away from you." Evan closed his eyes for a moment, jaw tight. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. He had no right. He said people might see me as a problem. You're not. And a weakness. You're not. And that if anyone finds out I'm connected to you, you're not connected to me. Evan cut in sharply. She flinched. His voice softened instantly. "I mean, you're not obligated to be. And nobody has the right to drag you into my world." Silence settled. She stared at the cracked pavement. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Evan turned to her. Then let me make something clear. Whatever Adrian said, whatever anyone says, you owe me nothing. You owe my world nothing. You don't need to protect me. She looked up. And what about me? Who protects me? His breath caught, and then, very quietly, I want to. Her heart twisted painfully. Evan, that's exactly the problem. They stared at each other then. Two people from different lives. Two people who should have walked away. Two people who didn't want to. Finally, Lena whispered, I didn't want you to walk out of the diner that day. His eyes softened, painfully, beautifully. I didn't want to leave. Then why did you? Because, he said, voice rough, it felt like the only way not to lose you. She closed her eyes. This was too much. And not enough. The choice that changed everything when she opened her eyes. He was still watching her, not demanding, not expecting, just there, for her. For once in her life, someone stayed. She took a shaky breath. She whispered, I don't want there to be a line between us. His breath hitched. But I don't know how to cross it. He didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. Slowly, she reached out, fingers trembling, and touched his hand. A tiny gesture. But in the silence, it felt like the earth shifted. His fingers curled around hers in a gentle, careful hold. Not pulling, not claiming, just answering. For the first time, he let himself hope. For the first time, she let herself fall. But fate was already walking toward them. Because that same night, Adrian made his next move. The night everything changed, Lena didn't want to go home. Not yet. Her hand was still in Evan's as they walked along the quiet back street behind the diner. It wasn't an embrace. It wasn't a declaration, just a warm, steadying presence. Something small, but enormous at the same time. Streetlights flickered. A cold breeze rustled the plastic lids in the trash bins. But for once, Lena didn't feel alone in the night. Evan glanced at her hand, still holding his. Is this okay? He asked quietly. She nodded. More than okay. He exhaled. Relief, disbelief, hope. They stopped at the corner, where his driver waited discreetly a few meters away. Do you want me to take you home? Evan asked. I can walk, she said. He watched her, reading something deeper behind her answer. You don't have to. I know, she said softly. But if I show up in that car, neighbors will notice, and questions will come. He froze. Of course. He hadn't thought of that. Not because he was careless, because he wasn't used to thinking about how everyday people lived, how visible everything was, how one wrong assumption could ripple. Right, he murmured. I understand. She gave him a small smile. I know you do. He hesitated. It felt too early to ask for more. It felt too painful to let her go. But he asked anyway, gently, will I see you tomorrow? I hope so. And before she lost her courage, she leaned forward and kissed him on the cheek. So quick, so soft. He almost wasn't sure it happened. Then she turned and walked away. Evan touched the place where her lips had been. He'd had millions, companies, accolades, power. But nothing had ever felt like that. Behind him, in the shadows across the street, a camera shutter clicked. And another. And another. The man who couldn't sleep, Evan didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in his penthouse, staring at the ceiling, replaying her voice, her touch, her breath on his skin. For the first time in years, hope didn't terrify him. But morning did, because hope meant risk. Nora found him in the office at 7 a.m., already reviewing contracts. You look exhausted, she said. I'm fine. Liar. He didn't look up. Anything I should know? Yes. Everything. No, nothing. She called. He said instead. She wanted to talk. Nora froze mid-step. And? He hesitated, then exhaled, admitting to himself more than to her. She doesn't want distance anymore. Nora's eyes softened. I'm happy for you, she said sincerely. Evan nodded, but a tension lingered behind his ribs. Why do you look like you're waiting for something to explode? She asked quietly. Because, he whispered, it usually does. They didn't know yet how literal that fear was. The photo that started a fire. Adrian sent the photos anonymously. Not to the company, not to Evan, to the press, to an online tabloid known for its merciless gossip columns. The headline went live at 11:24 a.m. Mysterious woman seen holding hands with Blackstone CEO. Identity unknown. 2 images, grainy, but recognizable. Evan and Lena walking behind the diner. Her hand in his. Her leaning to kiss his cheek. Evan's PR team saw it within minutes. They forwarded it to Nora. Nora's heart dropped. She didn't waste a second. She stormed into Evan's office. You need to see this. He looked up, frowning. What is? She placed the tablet in front of him. He froze, as if the world had been ripped open under his feet. Nora watched his eyes change, from shock to fear to horror, to something darker. Something that looked like self-loathing. Evan, she whispered, we can contain this. We can. No, he said quietly, staring at the photos. No, we can't. We've handled worse. Not when someone innocent is involved. That broke him. Nora leaned forward. You need to call her. Now. His hand trembled on the screen. She's not ready for this. He whispered. She doesn't deserve this. And she's going to find out. Soon. He closed his eyes. And, for the first time in years, he was afraid. Not of the world. Of losing her. The storm that broke her doorstep. Lena saw the headline by accident. She was scrolling through her cracked phone in the break room. Try to find a coupon for groceries. Then the image popped up, and she dropped the phone. Her co-worker, Mia, picked it up. Whoa, Lena, isn't that you? Lena stared at the screen, blood draining from her face. Her hands shook violently. Mia looked between her and the screen. Oh my God, Lena. That's Evan Blackstone. Lena couldn't breathe. The article spread faster than she could scroll. Comments poured in. Who is she? Gold digger. Typical. Rich men always find someone desperate. She knew exactly what she was doing. Watch. She'll play the victim soon. Not bad looking, but obviously after his money. Lena felt her body go cold. Mia squeezed her arm. Hey, breathe. Lena, look at me, breathe. But breathing was impossible. Because her phone buzzed with messages from unknown numbers. Is it true? How much is he paying you? Slut. Get out of his league. Her throat closed. I have to go, Lena whispered. She ran to the locker room, grabbed her things, and bolted out the back door. The same street where she had kissed him the night before. It felt like another universe now. She collapsed against the wall, knees trembling. And that's where Evan found her. The collision, his car screeched to a stop. He jumped out before the driver could open his door. Lena. She looked up at him, eyes red, breath shaking, phone buzzing nonstop. He froze. Seeing her like this broke something inside him. Evan, she whispered. They know. He stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid she might run. I'm so sorry, he said. I didn't know. I didn't see the cameras. I should have. It's everywhere, she said, voice cracking. My mom saw it. Leo saw it. People are calling me names, Evan. Horrible names. He swallowed hard. I'm going to fix this. You can't. I will. You can't. She repeated, louder this time. You can't fix what people think. You can't stop them from judging. You can't make the world kind. Her tears spilled. And I can't do this. I'm not built for this. He stepped closer. I'll protect you. That's what scares me, she cried. He froze. She wrapped her arms around herself. If you protect me from everything, I'll lose everything that's mine. My world, my life, my choices. Lena. And now everyone knows my face. They're talking about me like I'm nothing. You're not nothing, he whispered fiercely. Her voice broke. I can't breathe in your world. Evan felt those words like a blade. I'm sorry, he said, voice shaking. I'm so sorry. She looked up, eyes full of exhaustion. Please, Evan, just stay away. For now. He felt like the ground disappeared beneath him. Lena. She shook her head. Please. And that word, that one word, was enough to shatter him. He stepped back. Then another step. He looked at her as if letting her go hurt more than anything he'd ever endured. And she looked at him like she hated herself for needing space. He whispered, I'll wait. However long you need. But the distance between them had already opened, and the world was about to widen it even further. That night, the tabloids released more photos. More speculation. More fabricated stories. The pressure on Evan grew. The pressure on Lena became unbearable. By midnight, reporters were outside her apartment building. Her mother cried. Her brother panicked. Lena hid in her bedroom, shaking. And Evan? He sat alone in his penthouse. Staring at the phone, she refused to answer. The world was tearing them apart. And Adrian watched the chaos unfold with a quiet smile. The next morning, Brooklyn woke up before dawn. She hadn't slept more than an hour. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, his quiet hurt, the way he reached for her hand even after she pulled away, the unspoken plea in his voice when he whispered, Talk to me. She walked out anyway, and the guilt of that pressed on her chest like a stone. She showered, dressed, tied her hair back, and sat at the small kitchen table of her apartment with a cup of untouched coffee. She needed clarity. She needed to breathe. She didn't know what she needed. Her phone buzzed. 3 missed calls. Daniel Mercer, 1 new message. Daniel, please, just tell me you're okay. Brooklyn closed her eyes and exhaled shakily. He didn't deserve silence. He might have deserved anger, pain, questions, but not silence. But she wasn't ready to answer him yet. Not until she figured out why hearing about Alice had shattered her so deeply. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't insecurity. It was fear. Fear that she was stepping into a world where she would always be the vulnerable one. The one who could be left behind, overshadowed by ghosts, expectations, wealth, power, things that had never belonged to her. She grabbed her bag and went to work. At the office by the time she arrived, the day was already buzzing with tension. People whispered near the elevators. Assistants looked stressed. Emails pinged nonstop. Brooklyn stepped into the marketing floor and realized everyone was staring at her. Not obviously, not rudely, but enough for her to feel it crawl across her skin. And then she saw why. Daniel was standing at the doorway of her small office, waiting. He looked wrecked, not slept, not shaved, not pretending. For a moment, they just stood there, an entire conversation unfolding in the silent space between them. Hurt, confusion, fear, love neither had admitted yet, and a fragile thread that still tied them together. Can we talk? He asked softly. Her throat tightened. Not here. He nodded once, relieved she hadn't said no. He stepped aside as she entered the room, then followed and closed the door. He didn't try to touch her, didn't crowd her. He stood on the opposite side of the small table and said quietly, I owe you the truth. All of it. Not the polished version. Not the business version. The real version. Brooklyn swallowed. I'm listening. Daniel S. honesty, raw and unfiltered. I wasn't in love with Alice, he began. I need you to understand that first. She blinked, surprised at his bluntness. We were together 4 months. She was kind, intelligent, sweet. She wanted to support me, and I wanted to believe I could let someone in. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. I kept her at a distance, and she deserved better. He paused, voice cracking almost imperceptibly. She died during a charity climb I sponsored. I blamed myself for months. Not because we were together, but because she was my responsibility. People around me twisted it into a tragic love story I never lived. Investors, journalists, even my board. They all saw her as my almost fiancée. His eyes lifted to hers, tired red bare. It became part of my public image. A narrative I didn't create and couldn't escape. And I didn't want to drag you into that mess. Brooklyn stared at him, not angry, not relieved, just processing. And yesterday? She whispered. He flinched. Yesterday, when you pulled away from me, I panicked. I thought you were leaving. I thought. His voice broke, and he forced himself to continue. I thought history was repeating itself. That someone I cared about would disappear again, and I'd be helpless to stop it. Brooklyn's breath hitched. Cared about. Not a grand declaration. Not love. But real. Vulnerable. Human. She sat down slowly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? About her. About everything. He sat across from her. Elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Because when you look at me, he said softly, I feel like a man. Not a CEO. Not a walking headline. Not a tragedy. Just a man. And I didn't want to lose that. The words hit her like a wave. Warm. Painful, honest. Brooklyn opens up. Too. She let out a long breath. Daniel, you didn't hurt me because of Alice. You hurt me because you shut me out. You told me I matter. But when something real came up, something painful, you didn't trust me with it. His eyes softened with regret. I know, and I'm sorry. For all of it. But, she added, voice trembling slightly, I also ran away. I should have stayed and talked to you. I shouldn't have left you standing there. A faint, heartbreaking smile touched his lips. We're both a little broken, aren't we? Maybe, she whispered. But maybe broken people can still choose each other. The air between them shifted, gentle, cautious, hopeful. A knock on the door. They both turned as someone tapped lightly. It was Elena, Daniel's chief of staff. She rarely looked nervous. Today she did. Daniel, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to come upstairs. Now. He stiffened. What happened? It's the board, she said quietly. And they're not in a good mood. He stood slowly, jaw clenching. Of course they're not. He glanced at Brooklyn. A silent question. Are we okay? A silent answer in her eyes. We're trying. He exhaled, visibly relieved. I'll come find you afterward, he promised. Brooklyn nodded. Daniel opened the door to leave, but paused, turned back, and said, so softly no one else could possibly hear, thank you for staying. Then he walked away, straight into a storm he'd been avoiding for too long. Daniel stepped out of Brooklyn's office with a heaviness he hadn't felt in years. Not even during the worst nights after Alice's death. Not during the hostile takeover attempt 2 years ago. Not even when he almost lost the company he'd built with his bare hands. Because none of those battles were this personal. None of them involved someone who looked at him the way Brooklyn did. Like she saw through the facades he'd mastered for decades. The elevator ride to the top floor felt too short. When the doors opened, he walked straight into the cold, polished conference room where 10 board members sat waiting. Expensive suits, colder eyes, and expressions that said one thing. They smell blood. Daniel, said Chairman Whitford, an older man whose smile always felt like a threat. We have concerns. Of course they did. Daniel took a seat, steeling himself. Let's hear them, he said. Accusations, subtle and sharp. Whitford opened a document. The PR department brought something to our attention. A media outlet claims you're exhibiting erratic behavior. Daniel's jaw tightened. And by erratic, you mean? An emotional entanglement with an employee, another board member said, not bothering to mask his disdain. One significantly beneath your rank. Beneath. The word slashed through him. He expected anger to flare. Instead, he felt something colder. Protection. For Brooklyn. You're concerned about my personal life, he said slowly, while ignoring the fact that our Q4 numbers have exceeded projections. We're concerned, Whitford replied, tapping a pen on the table, that you're becoming a liability. You vanished from a major investor event last night. You've missed strategy meetings. You're distracted. And now you're romantically involved with a woman who works under your management chain. There it was. The whole accusation laid bare. Daniel leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. Is that all? He asked. Not quite, Whitford replied. Your relationship with Ms. Reyes is none of your business. Daniel cut in, calm as ice. Several board members exchanged looks. Whitford clasped his hands. It becomes our business when tabloids start connecting her to Alice Harland. Daniel felt something inside him snap, quietly, invisibly, but unmistakably. You will not drag that woman into comparisons with someone she never even met. Public perception doesn't care, Whitford replied, and neither do investors. So what exactly are you suggesting? Daniel asked, voice dangerously steady. A cooling-off period, Whitford said. Distance, professionalism, and discretion. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You wanted to cut her off, he said. To ensure this company's stability, Whitford confirmed. In your own reputation. We're protecting you. Daniel gave a humorless smile. You're protecting your leverage, your control. No one answered. Because he was right. Downstairs, Brooklyn faces her own reckoning meanwhile. Back on the marketing floor, Brooklyn stared at her computer screen without understanding a single email she read. What happened upstairs? Would Daniel come back down? Would he still want to talk? Would he decide that this, whatever they were, was too messy, too complicated, too risky? Her mind spiraled until she forced herself up from her chair. She needed air. She walked toward the bathroom. But halfway there, someone stepped directly into her path. Jessica Powell, head of PR. A woman who smiled like she was constantly smelling something unpleasant. Well, Jessica said, crossing her arms, looks like you've caused quite the earthquake. Brooklyn froze. Excuse me. Oh, don't play innocent. Jessica scoffed. Everyone knows why the board called an emergency meeting. You're the distraction that tripped the CEO. The humiliation hit hot and fast. I don't appreciate your tone, Brooklyn said quietly. Jessica smirked. Sweetheart, I don't need you to appreciate anything. What I need is for you to understand your place. Brooklyn stared at her. My place? Yes, Jessica said, stepping closer. And it's not next to a man like Daniel Mercer. Not publicly. Not privately. Not ever. Something inside Brooklyn hardened. For years she'd been talked down to, dismissed, underestimated, and endured it. But not today. Not now. Not after everything she'd been through with him. You don't get to decide what I am or am not to him, she said, voice steady despite her racing pulse. Jessica arched an eyebrow. You think he'll fight for you? Against this? Against us? Brooklyn swallowed. She wanted to say yes. But fear whispered the opposite. Jessica saw the hesitation and smiled. Exactly. She walked away, heels clicking smugly on the polished floor. The elevator dings. Brooklyn turned automatically at the sound. Daniel stepped out. He was pale, rigid. His tie loosened, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. People whispered as he passed. He didn't notice any of them. His eyes were fixed on her. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. He reached her and stopped inches away. Can we go somewhere private? He asked quietly. Brooklyn nodded. They walked into an empty meeting room. Daniel closed the door and exhaled shakily. They want me to stay away from you, he said. Her pulse stopped. They think you're a distraction, a PR risk, a mistake. He looked up at her then, and the devastation in his eyes made her chest ache. And she whispered. Daniel stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like he was approaching something breakable. I told him no. Brooklyn's breath caught. I told them I'm not ashamed of you. I told them that if they think you're a risk, then so am I. And if it comes down to choosing between protecting an image or protecting something real, something I'm finally not afraid to want, then I'll choose you every time. Brooklyn felt tears sting her eyes, because no one had ever chosen her first. Ever. Daniel's voice softened. But I need you to know what this means. They won't stop pushing. They'll try to make this hard. On me. On you. On both of us. Brooklyn wiped her eyes, breathing unsteadily. And what do you want, Daniel? He didn't hesitate. You. Her chest tightened, painful, warm, overwhelming. But if you don't want this anymore, he continued, if this stress is too much, I'll step back. I'll respect it. Just say the word. Brooklyn looked at him. This man who carried the world on his shoulders but still managed to stand in front of her and offer vulnerability instead of power. I don't want you to step back, she whispered. I want you. Even if it's complicated. Even if it scares me. Slow relief washed over his face, as though he'd been holding his breath since the moment she walked away from him last night. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. For a moment, the whole world fell quiet. But Daniel knew better than anyone. Storms don't end this easily. And another one was already on the horizon. Brooklyn sat on the edge of the worn leather couch in the private office, her hands trembling slightly as she stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights below blurred through her tears, each one a reflection of the chaos she had endured, the whispers, the photos, the judgment of a world that only saw her as a story, a headline, a distraction. Daniel Mercer entered quietly, closing the door behind him. The soft click of the lock felt like a shield, cutting them off from the world outside. He didn't speak immediately. He just stood there, taking in her fragile, exhausted frame, and something in his chest ached. You don't have to face it alone, he said finally, his voice gentle but firm. Brooklyn shook her head, bitterly laughing through tears. Alone. I've always faced everything alone. And now it feels like the world is trying to tear me apart for existing near you. Daniel stepped closer, kneeling beside her. He reached for her hand, holding it like it was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. Brooklyn, listen to me. No board, no article, no tabloid. No whispering crowd can define who you are. Only you can. And only I can promise to stand by your side as you decide who that is. Her chest tightened. But the pressure, Daniel, the scrutiny, the comparisons to someone I never knew. It's suffocating. I don't know if I can survive it. He tilted her chin up gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. There was nothing of the CEO, nothing of the public persona, just a man, vulnerable and human, who had chosen her over power, over expectation, over fear. Brooklyn, he whispered, you're stronger than you think. And even if the world doubts you, even if it challenges us at every step, I will not let you face it alone. I choose you. Here. Now. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Tears streamed down her face as the weight she had carried for so long, the shame, the fear, the doubt, began to lift, replaced by something tender and fierce all at once. She leaned into him, letting herself feel the warmth of his presence, the certainty in his words, the promise of loyalty that no storm could break. I choose you too, she whispered, even if it's hard, even if it scares me, even if the world tries to push us apart. Daniel held her close, breathing in the moment, letting the city noise fade behind the closed door. Then we face it together, he said. Everything else can wait. Everything else can be dealt with. But this, what we have, that is ours. For the first time since this ordeal began, Brooklyn felt a profound sense of peace. The headlines, the rumors, the judgment, they could rage outside. But inside this room, they were untouchable. Here, they had each other. Here, they had trust, loyalty, and love forged through trials that neither had expected, but both had survived. They stayed like that long after the city lights flickered and the office quieted, wrapped in the simple truth of their decision. No power, no wealth, no external expectation could undo what they had chosen in this moment: to face the world together, to protect one another, and to love fully, without hesitation. Brooklyn finally lifted her head, meeting Daniel's gaze. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "we face it together." "Always," he replied, holding her hand firmly, a quiet vow against the chaos outside. And in that room, away from prying eyes and whispering halls, they understood something both terrifying and beautiful: that love was not measured by ease or safety, but by the courage to choose one another. Again and again, despite everything, the storm had tested them. The world had judged them. But together, they had chosen. And that choice, deliberate, unwavering, and entirely human, was the true victory. For Brooklyn and Daniel, the fight outside would continue. But inside this office, in this moment, they had already won. The end.